Island of the Mad. Ambrose A., hunchbacked and orphaned since birth, is sent by a woman he barely knows on a mysterious mission to Venice to find a lost notebook. Once there, he encounters the ethereal Frida, a figure lifted from a brief passage in Mikhail Bulgakov's novel The Master and Margarita, who comes to him in the form of a voice that obeys neither the usual laws of time or space. Over a century before, she was executed for the death of her newborn baby, who she smothered and buried in the forest. She had been impregnated against her will by her employer. As punishment, in the afterlife, until recently, each night the white handkerchief she used to smother her baby has been brought to her. This part begins with Ambrose speaking. If you could see me, what would you see? A hunchbacked man in a frayed camel-colored coat, his large balding head seeming to protrude from his chest. And if I tried to look into your eyes, but it is rare that I would try, you would see a face straining sidewise, as if seeking some small, indiscernible speck in the distance, something, maybe, it could love. I have glimpsed from the corners of my eyes sudden fright in the eyes of those who've watched me. I don't blame them for their fear. Maybe we're all made of a secret, tender chaos not visible at the surface of skin, and I remind them of that chaos. Inside my hump, a bird has grown completely silent. Its dark, lidless eyes don't understand why it's not free. I was 8 when the doctors first told me the name of my illness as I lay in the orphanage's infirmary waiting for my bones to heal. Osteogenesis imperfecta, they said, and those words opened over me, a lunamaw's papery blind wings, though there was a harshness in them also. Gradually, the doctors gave me to understand that my bones would break over and over, that this wouldn't change. And without sufficient collagen, the whites of my eyes would turn blue, 2 small C's, but waveless, all turbulence hidden. Then gradually the hump began as well. So much averse I found and wondrous harsh. Which of my books had said this? Though I write these things, I speak of them to no one. Ambrose receives a letter from a woman he has worked beside but has never spoken to. Dear A., it is hard to know where to begin. Please forgive me, I sleep little now. In time I will sleep less, then probably within a year, not at all. Mine is a strange malady which is said to have its origins in Venice. There is a doctor there whose specialty is epilepsy, though he studies this as well. I expect nothing of him. In my sleeplessness, many things have begun to happen. Does it matter how or why? I see pages being written, then burned. The canals of Venice and St. Petersburg, a man in a stone room feverishly scribbling. Do you know of Mikhail Bulgakov, author of the novel The Master and Margarita? Lately his book has been coming into my mind, I don't know why. It is said he burned his unfinished manuscript, then wrote it all over again. This was under Stalin. From 1928 until his death in 1940, he hid it in a drawer, worked on it in secret. It's said no final version of the book survives, so there are many mysteries and questions. But what is known is the compassion of the text, its many strivings, transformations. Sometimes my mind wanders, I believe there is a certain notebook in Venice, now lost, not by Bulgakov, but by someone else. I sense in it many feelings not far from my own, and a person struggling with his body as I struggle with mine. But I know nothing of its contents, only that there's suffering in it, and gentleness, and deep care for another. Turgenev worried that one of his ghost stories was too fantastical, but Dostoevsky countered that in fact it was not fantastical enough, that the ordinary is stranger than anything if only we could see it. In my mind's eye, I see you walking in Venice, though I know it is hard for you to walk. I see you climbing up stone steps and finding in a drawer or somewhere the pages of that notebook. But how can I even say this to you? Una notte bianco, a night in white, this is what Venetians call a sleepless night. So much whiteness in me now, so much distance. You will understand now why I can no longer come to the office. Think of how fragile they are, the islands of the Venetian lagoon, so thin and unprotected. I believe you understand such fragility. I have sensed your kindness. If you go there, I will write to you, I promise. To his surprise, Ambrose has agreed to go to Venice. Shortly after his arrival, he breaks several bones and is confined to his rented room for several weeks. When able to walk again, he wanders into the fish market where he hears a woman's voice, but sees no one. The next day, he hears it again. He realizes it is Frida, the young murderess from Bulgakov's book. Although skeptical, he listens as day after day she speaks to him about the devastating Venetian plague of 1575 and her desire to do penance by caring for the dying on the plague island of Lazaretto Vecchio. She speaks from a liminal state in which time and space are unfixed and fluid. Xenopsilla chiopsis, Pulex irritans. These are the names of the fleas that carry plague. White clouds of insects rise like fragile cities from the bed sheets. Such softness kills. Did you know that fleas can jump for hours, even days, without resting? That although they feed on rodents and humans, they inevitably die of starvation? Black infested rats invade the dwellings of the poor, multiplying quickly in vast numbers. Imagine dirty wells overspilling, families huddled in close quarters. Everyone too afraid to go out. The authorities issue a new edict. All suspect clothing must be burned. But the poor hide what they can. What else is there to use against the cold? Sometimes they bury their coats in the hard earth. I tell you this as I watch your closed eyes, your face turned to the blank wall. Think of the shut houses of the poor, black pustules suddenly appearing, the chaos that replaces thought. On my island, Lazaretto Nuovo, the plague doctor has arrived to do his weekly rounds. He wears a broad black hat and a black coat sealed with wax to fend off infection. The coat extends from his neckline to his shoes. On his hands, he wears white gloves, and he carries a white measuring stick to mark the distance between himself and any other person. He refuses to stand close to anyone. He knows that skin can change from pink to black in a few seconds. It is more dangerous than a mind and quicker, more willing to erupt and vanish. But I haven't told you about his mask. It resembles your century's gas masks, but with a beak-like protrusion, the beak long and curved, its cavity filled with rosemary and camphor for detoxifying the air. In your century, you know this would be useless, though of course you have your own delusions. The round eyepieces are red glass. It is believed that the plague can be caught from just seeing an infected person. And now the doctor is inside the barracks. He lifts the sheets with his white stick, poking and probing, looking for abscesses and pustules. What does he see through his red lenses? Each face and body, the whole island, drenched in redness, everything flaring, festering, decomposing. After a few minutes, he pauses to write in his ledger, then silently indicates with his hand who can stay another week, who will be sent to Lazaretto Vecchio to die. And now the boat arrives to take him back, and just as quietly as he came to us, he leaves us. The plague doctor wears red lenses over his eyes, tries to cover and protect the deepest recesses of his eyes. But it's as if my eyes are covered with glass lenses also, only mine are tinted a deep black, or sometimes a blinding, glaring white, but never any other color, and I can never take them off. That night, Frida's face was beside me, her eyes covered with black lenses. In the dark, I could make out almost nothing, yet I was sure it was her. I heard her clear her throat, but instead of speaking, she picked up a rock, but where were we? And started digging. When the hole was 2 feet deep and just as wide, she reached in to retrieve the pile of contaminated clothes she'd hidden. Hundreds of miniature white handkerchiefs, stained and meticulously folded. For many hours she unfolded and refolded them. The sun was black and the few clouds. Then she raised her hands to her temples and started tugging to remove the black lenses. But nothing she could do could get them off. I wish I could show you what I've found. It's a curious document from the year 1576, the year of your Titian's death, remember? At first it seems just an ordinary plague ledger. August 21st, 40-year-old man dies within a day. Towards evening, a carbuncle breaks out on the right side of his mouth, followed by a high fever. By morning, a bubo has formed on his right groin. His heart stops that afternoon. August 22nd, 23-year-old pregnant woman dies. On Monday morning, falls ill with fever. Wednesday night, the fetus has aborted. Black morbilli all over her body. This afternoon, ceases breathing. The entries proceed in this way for many months. Hundreds of cases of the nameless dead. And always at the bottom of the page, the signature of the attending physician, Gaspare de Comite. But the last page is different. Here the doctor records his own symptoms. Wednesday, fever. Thursday through Saturday, there seems to be a reprieve. Sunday, a milky urine, red morbilli. Wednesday, black morbilli covering entire body. Beneath this, he confirms and signs his own time and date of death. Magister Gaspare de Comite died at approximately 5 o'clock in the afternoon, October 23rd. Today, I am remembering that on the island where you live, there is the Hospital of the Incurable, Or should I say it was there in the plague year of 1575? I believe it has since been abandoned. But back then it was inhabited by the ill who weren't sent to the lazarettos. And it was there that one day a man with a horrible pestilential mange called out in anguish for one of the young fathers. These were the years, of course, when everyone was afraid to touch or draw close to another. The young father was terrified, but scratched the patient's back as was required, then violently convulsed with nausea. But even then he didn't draw his hand away. "This man is suffering," he said to himself. He wrote this down later. "I must not shun him. What would I be if I shunned him?" Then suddenly, almost without thinking, he lifted his pus-covered finger from the man's oozing back and placed it in his mouth and sucked it. "And what of my own mouth? What of yours? And this white handkerchief inside me? I wonder what you think of what he did. Are you awake now, watching your red walls, hoping that my voice will leave you? Maybe you don't even hear me at all. What does it mean to truly feel the living flesh of another, the presence of another? I ask myself this often. I still need to find a boat to take me to Lazaretto Vecchio. I am not sure why I have told you what I have. Before I grew lost within this blackness, before I put on my black lenses, I saw the blue sclerae of your eyes. I'd read about such eyes in the fractured, twisted bones of your illness, the word incurable applied to your condition. I'd read about a surgery involving the insertion of a metal rod into the bone's internal cavity. This aspect of you so visible, and yet you treat it like a secret, so I think it deeply hurts and shames you. But it's why I noticed you for that first day at the fish market. Though your head hung heavily, I could still glimpse the bluish whites of your eyes, and the hump, irregular, lumpy, beneath your camel-colored coat, the awkwardness and worse, you have no choice but to carry. I had read about body casts, about something wrong with the DNA, children forced to lie in bed, the silence too loud, bones fracturing in the middle ear, a quick snap just like that, each part of them breaking. Even music can cause harm, or a wrong turn of the wrist opening a bottle. I wondered what it's like to live in minutes spiked and broken, each one too unwieldy, too unpredictable for your body. And in that split second I first saw you at the fish market, in my mind you were a child lying in a body cast, white as the white handkerchief I carry. A strange, inexplicable hurt went through me, and suddenly my voice was back, and I was speaking. I had lived for so long in total silence and black dirt. But when suddenly I could speak again, I meant to speak of you, yet spoke only of myself, that I condemned myself. I was looking at you, thinking only of you, and yet I opened my mouth and said, who could condemn me more than I condemn myself? And even if I hadn't spoken of you, there would have been so many things more interesting and more important to speak of than myself. Why didn't I speak of them? I told myself then I would speak to you of Venice, of the suffering here, that I would bring you anything but my own narrowness. You were alone. I would bring my facts to you. I didn't know what else I could offer, what else to do. I thought to myself, it is 1575. 50,000 souls have died in Venice. The senators have fled, but Cardinal Borromeo walks among the poor with his head uncovered and says to anyone who will listen, do not desert the afflicted. And the notary Benedette says the price of terror is isolation. He says, carry the sick to the hospitals and huts, nourish the infected, touch their feared bodies. Although Frida longs to know if Ambrose can hear her, and although he has grown very attached to her, for reasons he doesn't understand, he is unwilling to give her any sign. Even so, she continues speaking. I understand that I am nothing, that my suffering is nothing. But if I could understand how kindness moves from one body to another, from one mind into another, if I could see color again, if I could know the meaning of to kneel, the meaning of kindness, the meaning of tenderness, to tend, the meaning of to give. I believe now that you never heard me.